voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Well, it was a calmer night in Minneapolis, but still an impasse remains between Trump and local Democrats there. Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin is here to take on China. We'll talk to him, and Marco Rubio testifies on Capitol Hill. It's Wednesday, January 28th. This is the Scott Jennings Show on Salem. We're live from your nation's capital today, still fighting a cold, but determined to deliver common sense to the American people. We're all hopped up on Sudafed and Mucinex and hot tea and honey. Caroline's in here. She's got the honey jar. She's like Winnie the Pooh out here with all this honey. We'll see if we can make it through the show. Let's start with the news. A calmer night last evening in Minneapolis after Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, arrived and met with the governor, Tim Walz, and Minneapolis mayor and honorary Somali pirate, Jacob Frey. It appears that local police have now been freed up, at least in some instances, to help keep the peace. Now, before, they had been ordered to stand down and look away when federal agents were under attack from violent, angry mobs. That's a big step in the right direction for Homan. One has to wonder, had Walz and Frey allowed local police to do crowd control in the first place, would two people be dead right now? Perhaps not. Walz and Frey and the rest of the Minnesota Democrats radicalized, mobilized, and unleashed political vigilantes and then told the local cops to look the other way. It's that simple. At least now, this matter appears to be resolved of using local cops to do crowd control. Let's hope it stays that way. But there is no resolution on the only question that matters. Will Mayor Frey cooperate with ICE and let them take custody of illegal aliens who were in the local jail? Homan asked for it. Trump wants it. And today, Frey still says no. He will not cooperate. He says federal immigration laws will not be enforced in Minneapolis. The attempted secession from the union continues. The lack of cooperation is the entire reason for the large ICE presence in Minneapolis in the first place. Minneapolis is a sanctuary city, and Frey is taking that to the extreme, protecting violent, illegal populations at all costs. There are nearly 1,400 illegal aliens in Minnesota jails as we speak. While many Democrats are content to die on this hill of defending all illegal immigration, at least one of them is having a change of heart. I want you to listen to this exchange last night on CNN between Caitlin Collins and Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, Cut 8.
Do you still agree with that tonight? Is that still your position, that sanctuary cities make people safer?
I think at that time the dynamic has changed much differently, and the border has become more and more increasingly more difficult. So for me now, I think it's entirely appropriate to make the adjustments, and I do think at this point we should be turning over all the criminals that are in custody in all these jurisdictions.
Does that, I mean, for Minneapolis, obviously you're the senator from Pennsylvania, but in Minnesota, Jacob Frey, the mayor, says he doesn't believe that they should cooperate with those federal enforcement laws. So you do believe that they should be cooperating more with the Trump administration?
What I do believe is that if there are law enforcement that have these people in custody that are behaving in criminal behavior, then yes, they should cooperate with that. And those individuals, if they're convicted, should be deported.
If only Minnesota had Democrats as sensible as John Fetterman. Now, Trump has the right guy on the ground here in Homan, but Democrats have chosen so poorly when it comes to leadership that a common sense outcome in Minnesota seems a remote possibility. Sadly, Democrats nationwide are more apt to display the attitude of Walz and Frey than Fetterman. In fact, in Fetterman's home state of Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia District Attorney, Larry Krasner, is facing enormous backlash today for these comments about federal law enforcement officers. You won't believe your ears. Here's Cut 6.
This is a small bunch of wannabe Nazis. That's what they are. In a country of 350 million, we outnumber them. If we have to hunt you down, the way they hunted down Nazis for decades, we will find your identities. We will find you. We will achieve justice.
It's hard to imagine anything more chilling than that. The left in this country must decide. Are we a nation of laws, including immigration laws, or are we a nation that lives under mob rule? Now, I appeared on CNN yesterday afternoon with Casey Hunt to make a plea for being a nation of laws. Here's cut 10.
I would just caution all these people. You cannot let an angry mob nullify federal law in a jurisdiction. If they do that,
the American people? Is that what the angry mob is? The American people?
These people in Minneapolis are an angry mob, whether you like it or not. They don't like the fact that the president is enforcing long-standing federal immigration law.
Does that mean they should be shot on the streets, Scott?
No,
that's the question that we're talking about, right?
The debate is about what the president's going to do next. And if you were to let them win and you were to be run out of town, what do you think would happen in L.A., Chicago, New York, all over the country? You're either going to choose to enforce the law or you're not.
I mean,
do I think it's problematic? Of course it's problematic.
Okay, was it wrong?
Anytime someone
how far
dies,
are you willing to go?
anytime someone dies, it's problematic. But what they're asking for is for federal law enforcement to be sent out of town.
Is it wrong?
And that no federal laws be enforced.
Wrong?
Was what happened to Alex Preddy on the street wrong?
Was it wrong?
Was it wrong?
I'm waiting for an investigation, which I fully support. I don't know what the circumstances were.
If
I don't
there was
like
a Democratic president in the White House, would you be able to say it was wrong?
Would I want an investigation? Would I want an Of course I would. I don't like that people have died. I don't like this chaos. But I also don't like the idea that we're just going to say, well, in this one little territory, we're not going to enforce federal laws anymore. That doesn't strike me as a good idea for the president right now. So he's got a tricky situation. It's very complex, but being run out of town by an angry mob to me is not an option.
That was the debate we had on CNN yesterday afternoon, and it is the question of the day. Are we a nation of laws, or are we a nation of mobs? And how are we going to treat the people who enforce our laws? Are we going to treat them like Nazis to be hunted, as the Philadelphia district attorney says? Are we going to continue to call them the Gestapo? That's what Tim Walz has called them. This is the language they are using today to set up the action tomorrow. Make no mistake. This is not mere rhetoric for these Democrats. They fully intend to do this. In California, a congressman named Eric Swalwell, who's now running for governor of California, has threatened similar retribution for anyone who has ever worked for ICE. So you have people who sign up to be law enforcement, who sign up to do public service for the federal government, who put themselves in harm's way to protect us and to enforce our laws. They don't write laws, they enforce laws. And they get to be treated like Nazis, to be hunted down. It's really unbelievable. This is a pivotal moment for Donald Trump's presidency, in my opinion. It is a pivotal moment because allowing angry mobs to nullify federal laws would create open season on law enforcement in cities across the country. And that simply cannot be allowed. I don't believe the president is going to allow it. After all, enforcing our immigration laws and cleaning up the immigration crisis caused by Democrats is one of the key reasons he was elected in the first place.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
You know, I keep reading all these headlines, and it's good news in America that homicide rates have plummeted. And then the subheadlines all say, no one knows why. And I thought to myself, how could we find out the answer to this question? And here's the answer. Joining us is Rafael Mangual. Raf is the Nick O'Neill Fellow at the Manhattan Institute. He is a contributing editor at City Journal. He is a member of the Council on Criminal Justice. He is one of the nation's foremost experts on criminal justice and crime statistics. Raph, welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show.
Always good to be with you, Scott. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for coming in today. So there's a new report from the Council on Criminal Justice that shows that data collected from 35 American cities showed a 21% decrease in the homicide rate from 2024 to 2025. Carjackings, shoplifting, aggravated assaults are all down as well. Why is that? We have a lot of media asking why or saying they don't know why. What's your view?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons. I mean, the one thing I always like to tell people is to resist the temptation to nationalize conversations about crime. Crime, as we all know, is a very hyper-local phenomenon. It's something that you experience where you are, when you're there. It's not something that you experience in the aggregate. And so we should resist explanations that sort of aggregate crime as a whole. That said, I do think that there are a bunch of things that are going on in the country, both policy and non-policy related phenomenon that can, I think, help explain why these numbers are moving in the direction that they're moving, which, by the way, is very, very good news. On the non-policy side, we've had some major shifts throughout the country. We've seen a significant move towards suburbanization. So urban populations are declining in a lot of parts of the country. We have seen a pretty significant decline in alcohol consumption, which is just generally associated with the commission of violent crime. We're seeing massive changes in routine activities, more work from home rates, more time spent at home, more time spent in the gym when you're outside of the home, as opposed to time spent in bars and nightclubs, which tend to be loci of crime. And why that matters, actually, is because the more time that we spend at home, the fewer opportunities there are for criminals to victimize us. And so the raw numbers in a lot of these crime categories no longer tell the same story, right? Because we have to now view them conditional on being in a place where we might otherwise be victimized. And that's basically just a nerdy way of saying that we need to control for the amount of time that people are spending outside. And then on the policy side, look, police departments around the country have been reasserting themselves the last couple of years. We're seeing arrest numbers go up. We're seeing stops go up. For the first time in over a decade, we are seeing the prison population at the national level tick upward. We are seeing local jail populations tick upward. Lots of states in the wake of 2020 started to harden their criminal justice systems. A couple of examples are Louisiana. Tennessee, especially, I think, has been a national leader with initiatives like truth in sentencing and, bail reform initiatives and, blended juvenile sentencing and, basically making it so that it's easier to send bad guys to jail. And the cops, I think, are kind of, taking control back of the streets. When you combine that with some of the things on the non-policy side, I think we can kind of get to at least a plausible explanation for why things are moving in the direction that they're moving. And I just want to say, the reason that a lot of people on the left like to say we don't know why it is so that, they can discount the policing.
Yeah, that's my question here. A couple things jumped out to me in your answer. One, it sounds like our social habits, our cultural habits are part of it, but there obviously are policy differences. You cited some states that have cracked down, increased policing. I assume it's your view that we're still seeing a big difference between red states and blue states when it comes to increased policing and increased incarceration rates for people who commit violent crimes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I think states, like I said, Tennessee, Louisiana have kind of really stood out in the national picture as states that have moved, pretty significantly to the right in terms of their broader criminal justice policies. We've seen rollbacks of some of these parole reforms. We've seen reintroductions of, 3 strikes measures and truth in sentencing measures. These are all things I think that reflect, the sense that a lot of these places had kind of just had it. But one of the other things I think we need to realize is that in a lot of blue cities, there have been some significant changes. We have seen blue city DAs lose their seats. In Oakland, California, you had Pamela Price successfully recalled and replaced with Jones Dickinson. You had Nate Hockman in Los Angeles. Eileen Burke O'Neill.
Some people
take over for Kim
turns out constituents out there don't like it. When they can't go out on their front porch without being murdered or carjacked. Raph, I love this conversation. I'm going to have you back soon. Raphael Mangual, he's at the Manhattan Institute. Read him in the City Journal. Raph, Thanks for joining us today. We got to take a break. When we come back, Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin is here. An important topic. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us. Common sense for the American people.
Saving Western civilization, one busted leftist narrative at a time. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Wednesday, January 28th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is here on Salem. Joining us in just a moment, the Arkansas Attorney General, old friend of mine, Tim Griffin, is going to tell us about gray zone warfare. This is a very interesting and vital conversation. You're going to want to hear it. First, a word from our friends and partners at Child Help. Let me tell you a story that our friends at Child Help see far too often. It starts as a game, a kid logging on after school, talking with friends, having fun. Then someone else joins the conversation. At first, nothing feels wrong, compliments, curious questions, someone paying attention. But over time, the messages become more personal, then private, then secret, and then uncomfortable. That's how online grooming works. And that's where Child Help steps in. They have life-saving programs that focus on prevention education, intervention, and treatment. They help kids recognize grooming behavior before it turns into abuse. And they help parents know what warning signs to look out for. Also, Child Help runs the National Child Abuse Hotline. I'm sure you've heard about that. Thousands upon thousands of calls go into this hotline. Child Help is the #1 premier nonprofit organization in America, stopping child abuse, helping kids who are in crisis. And for $27, you can help protect one child from abuse. Here's how to do it. Text the word Child Help to 94878 or go to childhelp.org/Scott. Again, text Child Help to 94878 or go to childhelp.org/Scott. All they're asking for is $27. I donate myself. I have visited the headquarters. I know the executives. You can take it from me. It's an organization worth promoting. It's Scott Jennings here on Salem. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard the phrase gray zone warfare? Now, I'll be honest, I had not heard it until just recently when my friend, the Attorney General of Arkansas, Tim Griffin, mentioned it to me when we saw each other down in Little Rock. And as I learned about this, I thought, I've got to bring my listeners this incredible story. Let's start here with cut 14. This is Tim Griffin.
You may or may not know, it's well documented, that the fentanyl that's on the street in the United States is manufactured south of the border, primarily in Mexico, with ingredients shipped from mainland China. And if you think that the government of China is trying to stop that, you would be wrong. This fits into what I've talked about before, which is gray zone warfare, which is China is able to kill Americans and to disrupt our societies and erode our social fabric without pulling a trigger. By doing things in our communities that degrade us as a society and destroy families. You may or
And joining us now, military veteran and Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin. My friend, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show.
Thank you for having me. It was great to have you in Arkansas. And thanks for having me to talk about this really, really important topic.
Yeah, when you were discussing this with me down in Little Rock, the way you put it together, I mean, it made a lot of sense to me, and you're dealing with all these things going on in our communities on a daily basis. Kind of give me an overview. How did you get interested in this phrase, gray zone warfare? And just give us an idea. When you're in Arkansas, how does it play out in local communities there, and what are you as an attorney general able to do about it?
Yeah, so I've been in the military going on 30 years in June, 29 years in the reserve. 1 year of that was active duty. I'm now in the Guard. So the term gray zone warfare is extremely common in the national security space. If you go to Google and you search gray zone warfare, you will see more stuff than you can read. It's everywhere. It's well known if you're in that world. If you're not in that world, you don't hear the term gray zone warfare much at all. I have sought to change that. Why? And what is it? So, gray zone warfare is basically warfare in the gray zone between peace and full-on kinetic warfare that we normally think of. When we think of warfare, Scott, we think of bullets, we think of bombs, we think of tanks, we think of fighters. So that's what we call war. Everybody would agree on that. World War II, you name it, right? On the other side of that is just complete peace. So in the middle is this massive gray zone. And in the gray zone is where a lot of our adversaries want to live. They don't want peace with us. They don't like us. They are our enemy, our adversary. But they can't engage in traditional warfare. Some of them can't engage in traditional warfare yet because they're not able. They would lose. So the gray zone is where a lot of conduct occurs that wouldn't necessarily qualify as traditional warfare, but it hurts us. And it gives our adversaries an advantage. So let me give you some examples. Cyber attacks. Now, when I'm talking about these examples, I'm not talking about rogue, random kids on their couch. I'm talking about engagement by foreign governments. Let's take the Chinese, right? Or North Korea, whatever. Engagement by foreign governments, or at a minimum, foreign governments blessing, encouraging, fomenting that sort of activity. So one would be cyber attacks, right? We have cyber attacks that disrupt, shut down certain companies or certain power infrastructure. We have cyber attacks that steal information, all of those sorts of things. And oftentimes in the gray zone, the government of a country, let's say China, is the one engaged in this. Now that's not typically characterized as full-on war, right? But there is a gradient spectrum. So if they attacked us or one of our companies and stole our information, would that be war, traditional war? Would that lead to bombs? Probably not, right? But what if they shut down a bunch of hospitals and no one dies? Probably not. What if they shut down a bunch of hospitals and many people die? You can see it's a gradient spectrum. And the more damage is done in the gray zone, the closer you get to war. Fentanyl distribution that kills Americans. When it's intentional by the Chinese government, which it is, and I could go into all that, that's well documented. Illicit massage parlors. I don't mean one or two by local people. I'm talking about more Chinese operated illicit massage parlors in this country as we have McDonald's.
Wow.
We have
you're saying there's as many of that as McDonald's? Wow.
As many as McDonald's. This is well documented. There's a great group out of Virginia, the Network, and they track these. So I used to think that these were sort of mom and pop criminals in local communities. But what we found out over time at every single one that we have raided, illicit massage parlors, every single one of them has been Chinese tied. Wire transfers to mainland China, Chinese currency. Think about that. Chinese currency in rural Arkansas. Okay. We have a guy, Gary Liu, that we caught with the U.S. Marshals over in Oklahoma. He's in a jail in Arkansas, $10 million bond. He's a mid-level human trafficker. These are not what we think of as traditional prostitution, locally run. These are human trafficking operations in these massage parlors all over the country. So we've interviewed numerous witnesses, and they basically say that they're Chinese citizens ladies, women, and minors are often the victims in these trafficking rings. But they respond to ads in China for work in the U.S. They don't know what kind. They come over, they're brought in, and then they are sent to particular areas, and then they're moved around, but they're basically sex slaves. And the general gist of that was they were told to go to a certain place, either on the border with Mexico at Texas or California. And we asked them, how did you get in the U.S.? They walked across the border and said asylum. And then most of them only speak Mandarin through interpreters. They knew where to say they needed to go, either Monterey Park, California, or Flushing, New York. Those are the two main hubs. But this has not happened we have not found that it's happened in the last year. This was all when the border was not being secure.
Tim, we've got about a minute to go. I want to give you a chance to tell me, as Attorney General, I'll be honest, listening to you talk about this, China seems to be more of an interference in our day-to-day life, just in average communities, than most people would know. I mean, is that a big surprise when you took this job as Attorney General, when you got elected? Has this been a shock to you? It is to me.
Well, I knew that they were working to undermine us in our society. I did not know the number of ways they were doing it in all of our backyards. Here's the way to think of the gray zone. Think of it as a hub, and there's all these spokes of activity. So there's the fentanyl trade, killing Americans. Normally war costs money. They're killing Americans and making money, right? You have the illicit sexual massage. You have the farmland that they're getting for strategic advantage. You have the stealing of intellectual property. We had a case with the feds here where they stole rice seed for the genetic makeup to grow more at home. We have the smuggling in of bioweapons, as you saw from Wuhan a few months ago. The feds caught somebody, I think it was in Michigan. You have cyber attacks. Each of these are spokes on the gray zone hub. And if you think of it that way, you see we are, in a way, already in conflict with the Chinese.
We're fighting them. That's Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin. Thanks for these insights today. When we come back, Marco Rubio's on Capitol Hill. Stay with us.
Conversations and stories you simply won't hear from the mainstream media. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Rounding out the hour here with Capitol Hill coverage, Secretary of State Marco Rubio testified today. He may still be there, actually, in front of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Rubio, again, proving himself to be the president's most able communicator, especially on world affairs. The hearing was about Venezuela. Rubio laying out the importance of taking out Maduro. Here's cut 7.
Let me just say this. What is our goal going in? We had in our hemisphere a regime operated by an indicted narco trafficker that became a base of operation for virtually every competitor, adversary, and enemy in the world. It was, for Iran, their primary spot of operation in the Western Hemisphere was Venezuela. For Russia, their primary base of operation in the Western Hemisphere, along Cuba and Nicaragua, was Venezuela. In the case of China, China was receiving oil at a huge, about $20 a barrel discount. And they weren't even paying money for it. It was being used to pay down debt that they were owed. This is the oil of the people of Venezuela, and it was being given to the Chinese as barter at a 20%, at a $20 discount per barrel in some cases. And so you had basically 3 of our primary opponents in the world operating from our hemisphere from that spot. It was also a place where you had a narco-trafficking regime that openly cooperated with the FARC and the ELN and other drug trafficking organizations using their national territory. It was an enormous strategic risk for the United States, not halfway around the world, not in another continent, but in the hemisphere in which we all live. And it was having dramatic impacts on us, but also on Colombia and on the Caribbean basin and all sorts of other places. It was an untenable situation, and it had to be addressed. And it was addressed. And now the question becomes what happens moving forward. As I've described to you in previous settings and in individual conversations, we had three objectives here. The final, I'll work it backwards, because the end state here is we want to reach a phase of transition where we are left with a friendly, stable, prosperous Venezuela.
Marco Rubio running circles around the Democrats on the committee today and making clear that our adversaries, the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians, all had a foothold in our hemisphere because of Maduro. I want you to listen here to Rubio, by the way, separate the good guys from the bad guys. Here's cut 12.
Or it gets complicated, I'll certainly let you know. But our anticipation is that we're going to be able to continue to work cooperatively with them because it's in their interest and ours. But I will point out to this. After this operation happened, look at the people who criticized it. I mean, there were others. China, Russia, Iran, Hamas. These were the people that were upset about this strike and this raid and what we did. And I can tell you that in many countries in the Western Hemisphere, there was great pleasure in the fact that Maduro was removed and that it didn't involve an all-out war and an invasion.
Rubio there responding to Democrats on the committee who were harping on him today about Venezuela. And he pretty much made it clear. Criticizing the president on Venezuela today meant joining up with China, Russia, Iran, and Hamas. It was brilliant. One final clip from Rubio. This is cut number 9 about how Venezuela could return to being a prosperous nation.
The Iranian presence, the Chinese influence, the Russian presence as well. In fact, I would tell you that there are many elements there in Venezuela that welcome a return to establishing relations to the United States on multiple fronts. We are at the end talking about a Western country that has a long history of cooperation and work with the United States. At one time, Venezuela, pre-Chavez, was a very strong U.S. ally. And we hope to get back to that point. We're not there. This thing still is in its infancy. But I certainly think a lot of progress has been made in that regard.
I was impressed with your description of the fact how careful you were in.
Marco Rubio today testifying in front of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about Venezuela, and once again showing why the president trusts him so much and why the president's given him so many jobs. We're coming down to the last few seconds here of hour number 1 of the Scott Jennings Show. We do have a little bit of breaking news just into the show. According to this report, the FBI is now executing a search warrant at a Fulton County election office in Georgia related to the 2020 election. I don't have anything more than the headline at the moment, but again, the news is the FBI is executing a search warrant at a Fulton County election office in Georgia related to the 2020 election. The other news of the hour that we haven't discussed, the person who squirted some kind of a substance on Ilhan Omar at her town hall meeting last night has been arrested, and it seems like the substance has been identified as apple cider vinegar. So Ilhan Omar is unharmed by the apple cider vinegar attack, but the substance has been identified. We'll take a break and we'll come back. It's more common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is on Salem. Stay with us.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
It's Wednesday, January 28th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings broadcasting from your nation's capital. We have some breaking news into the show to start this hour. This is a message sent moments ago from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. She is on the ground in Minnesota, and she says that federal agents have arrested 16 Minnesota rioters for allegedly assaulting federal law enforcement, people who have been resisting and impeding federal law enforcement agents. Bondi says we expect more arrests to come. We'll keep an eye on this. Coming up this hour, Jessica Schwab from the Free Beacon has some new reporting. Anti-Semitism at Columbia University back in the news. Jessica's been the intrepid reporter uncovering the malfeasance at Columbia We'll get her on the line shortly. Alabama Senator and gubernatorial candidate Tommy Tuberville joins us at the bottom of the hour, 33 minutes past the hour. Let's start, however, with the news of the day here in Washington. President Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent held a big event today to promote the new Trump accounts that were included in the big, beautiful bill last summer. Trump accounts are tax-advantaged, custodial-style investment accounts for children designed for long-term wealth building. The U.S. Treasury provides a $1,000 seed deposit for babies born between 2025 and 2028. You can do $5,000 in annual contributions until they turn 18. The accounts can be opened in early 2026. President Trump himself touted the value of these accounts today. Let's hear Cut 11.
Account should reach at least $50,000 in value by the time the child turns 18 and could be very substantially more than that. With slightly greater contributions, the typical account will grow to $100,000, $200,000. It can even grow up to past $300,000 per child. And we think most likely, the most likely cases in the $200,000, $300,000 range. The size and scale of this wealth will dwarf all government programs ever created to benefit America's youth. There's never been anything like this. That's why everybody's talking about it.
Joining us on the line here at the Scott Jennings Show is Joe Livornia, economist and counselor to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. You've heard Joe on here before talking about economic news. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Yeah, glad you're here because this was a huge event. I saw President Trump. I saw Scott Bessent. I saw Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. I saw Nicki Minaj, of all people, there today. And everybody was bringing attention to these Trump accounts, which are now active. So tell us, how does this work? How do you get your kids signed up for a Trump account?
Yeah, so, certainly the president knows how to brand and market, and gotten certainly a tremendous amount of press, and that was one of the reasons why we wanted to do the summit. And you've got a lot of companies across all different industries. A wide swath of large companies now are going to be partaking in this as well, more wealthy philanthropists and such. So it's all great news. Essentially, you can go to, very simple, you can go to trumpaccounts.gov and sign up there. Or when you're filing your taxes for this year, you go to Form 4547. You can sign up there, and the government will put the money in the account around July 4th. You will choose a low-cost index fund that broadly mimics the broader market, or some other market-based account where they'll have low costs, and will proxy the U.S. stock market, which has been an engine of value creation or engine of wealth, as the president highlighted, for decades. And that hopefully will likely be the case, especially with President Trump's policies in place.
Okay. The kids that are eligible here have to be born between January 1st, 2025 and 2028. Is that right?
That is correct. That is correct. But if you were born before 2025, you can still invest $5,000 tax-free. You just won't get the benefit of the $1,000 seed investment or seed capital that the Treasury will be making.
So I'll just give you my example. I have 4 kids, 16, 12, 10, and 8. You're saying they could all get a Trump account and we could put $5,000 in the accounts?
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's we'll have to get the Jennings financial wizards on the line after the show today and get working on that. I had been thinking this was just for these babies, and now everybody can do it. That's terrific. So tell us about the investments. So these accounts get opened up, and they're tied to the performance of the stock market. How does that work?
Right. So, I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't seen everything is there's still more details coming out, but essentially, it would be like an S&P 500. S&P 500 is a very familiar benchmark. It covers, the broad market, the 500 biggest, best, most important companies, so to speak. You'd buy something that mimics that performance, so you get the exposure to the stock market, but at a low cost. So the transaction fees are basically, or the cost of maintaining that account are de minimis, because what we want to be able to do is have young boys and girls have exposure to the stock market in the most efficient way that's most likely to capture the upside that the stock market historically has provided.
So when the kid turns 18 years old, they get full access to this account. At that point, the money becomes theirs and they can do with it what they want?
Yep, that's correct. It almost kind of works, and they could keep it in longer, which I would hope they would, because they're going to have great returns and they'll make more from compounding it the longer they keep it in. But at that point, yes, at 18, it's theirs. It goes from the custodianship from the parent to the child or the adult now, and then it effectively works as like an IRA in some sense. You'd be taxed on the on the monies made over that time if you were to take it out.
So you can leave it in, though. So when the kid turns 18, you can choose to just let it keep growing, is what you're saying.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that, given, there's a huge, in some sense, implied financial literacy component to this, because people are going to see their savings growing. And the longer they leave it in, the more it's going to grow. And hopefully they'll leave it in for that exact reason and continue to contribute during this time. And by the way, you could give up to $5,000 annually, and it doesn't have to just be, a parent or guardian or family member. It could be an employer. Employers are allowed to give up to $2,500. That doesn't count as employee income to the program as well. So, there's a lot of ways you could contribute and really build this in a meaningful way, so that when the time is up, whenever you decide to take it out, you have a substantial amount of savings. You really got financial security, or as the president highlighted earlier today, it's never been done before. This is going to be a real novel event that's really going to help working class families, a large percentage of which to this day don't have any stock market exposure.
So what you're saying is that an employer could give a $2,500 bonus to an employee, but give it to these Trump accounts for their kids, and that would not count as taxable income. That is a great, if you were trying to do something for your employees, that's a great thing to do. Give $2,500 to a kid's account. It doesn't count against you on taxes. What a great benefit that would be if a business decided to do that.
Yep, and that's why so many of these companies now, just in the last day, even today, Bank of America, I believe, one of the latest, saying they're going to partake in this program. I mean, it's hard not. There's just not. What's not to like? And that's a rhetorical question, of course, Scott.
That's Joe Livornia. I know that, sir. Thank you for telling me, though. I appreciate the. I appreciate the cue. I knew it. That's Joe Livornia. He's economist and counselor to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and he and the Treasury guys and the White House team were rolling out these Trump accounts today. Sign up for them. If you have kids, trumpaccounts.gov, or when you file your taxes, there's a form. You can do it there. Joe Livornia, thanks for joining us on the show today, and we'll look forward to having you back in the near future. I do want to give you...
Fighting the left with the best weapon we have, common sense. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Wednesday, January 28th. Scott Jennings here, broadcasting live from Washington, D.C. We're looking back into the story about anti-Semitism on college campuses, and wouldn't you know it, Columbia University back in the news. The headline today, Columbia vowed to expel Kimani James, who fantasized about murdering Zionists, and he could return this fall. With this report, joining us now, Jessica Schwab, a reporter for the Washington Free Beacon. Jessica, thanks for coming back to the Scott Jennings Show. Let's start with this. Who is this character, Kimani James, at Columbia University?
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for having me. Kimani James was really the face of the anti-Israel and what became the very overtly anti-Semitic movement on Columbia's campus. He, I think, really stood out because he was just so proud of his anti-Semitic remarks and behavior, especially during an incident that happened in April 2024, where I actually happened to capture this on video. I had walked into the encampment, and within a minute, he had accosted the few friends and I who had walked in, just looking to observe. We came in peace, and he rallied a mob of roughly 200 people. All of these heads popped out of the tents on the campus quad, and he said, "We have Zionists on the encampment. Let's form a human chain where I'm standing so we can kick them out." And that's what the group did. They followed him like a demagogue. And so the fact that there is a possibility for him to rejoin the Columbia community in fall 2026 is a surprising opportunity that they would give this student who has demonstrated that he is not on campus to build civil discourse, but most just to disrupt.
So who makes this decision at Columbia, Jessica? Is it lie with the president of the university? Is there a dean? Who will ultimately make the call on bringing this person back?
Yeah, so the admissions decisions fall to the admissions committee at Columbia. However, it seems in this case, which is quite exceptional, that the president would have a final say over this matter. That part is a bit unclear. However, now that Columbia has a new president, it seems that the decision to allow him back onto campus would fall in her hands right around the time when she herself, Jennifer Mnuchin, is taking the reins of this embattled university.
Okay, according to your report, if they bring him back, it would go against what Columbia claimed when he was expelled and what they told Congress. There was a hearing of the House Committee on Education and Workforce, chaired by Representative Virginia Fox. And in September, the university president said they made a direct statement that Kimani James would be expelled for his anti-Semitic rhetoric. So if the new president here at Columbia goes back on that, what are the implications there about what they told Congress at that particular hearing?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe there might be another congressional hearing. That's not out of the question in my mind. They did tell Virginia Fox, they made a direct statement, as you said, that this student would be expelled, and clearly he wasn't. And so it's really an open question as to how the university is going to respond to his application should he apply for the fall 2026 semester. They did reject his bid to re-enroll in the fall 2025 semester. And so I'm not sure how James intends to sort of clean up his act to make his application more appealing in the next many months, but we'll see.
Jessica, I've got about 30 seconds. You've been in and out of these encampments. You've covered this deeply. Do Jewish students feel safe as we talk today at Columbia University?
I think that turmoil has clearly not gone away, but the university seems to have kept their radicals on a tighter leash. However, this new president, there's some questions left open given that she struck a deal with her own campus's Gaza Solidarity encampment following the radicals' occupation of this major campus nexus. And so we would like to see that Jewish students have nothing to fear, especially with this person possibly coming back. But yeah, I think there's a mixed feelings on campus.
Still some open questions out there. Jessica Schwab, read her reporting in the Free Beacon. It's common sense for the American people. Stay with us. Wednesday, January 28th, Common Sense for the American people. Scott Jennings reporting to you live from your nation's capital. Breaking news into the show. It looks like the Fed says there will be no rate cut today. Rates staying at 3.5% to 3.75%. So that's just coming out of the Federal Reserve. Rounding out the show today, big honor for me to have on our next guest. He is Senator from Alabama. He is running for governor of Alabama. and he's one of the most legendary football coaches in American history. Coach Tommy Tuberville, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor and a privilege. I love your work, and I try to fashion myself after you about how you can debate and get under these people's skin on the left. But at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, and hopefully we can get this mess straightened out.
Well, I'm glad. I'm honored by your compliments, sir, and I'm glad to have you on this momentous day. We have breaking news that I think you are uniquely qualified to comment upon. How is it that Bill Belichick was snubbed by the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Everybody I know is going crazy about this. What's going on with these guys? Bill Belichick, 6 Super Bowls. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's just the sign of times. You know, at the end of the day, one of the better coaches ever, and you don't judge people on on what they are today. You judge them on what they did while they were NFL. And you had a lot of people look at, you know, probably the last year, his girlfriend, and you know, not a very good year at North Carolina, but a guy that wins all those Super Bowls. And again, he has made so many record books. It's a disgrace. And the people that are on that committee that did not vote for him should step down immediately, because they have no business being on there. It's just, I hate it for him. But I hate it for the NFL. Our NFL is in a tailspin, and they had been in a tailspin for 20 years since Colin Kaepernick took a knee and all this woke nonsense. And now I don't call this a Super Bowl with this rabbit or the bunny guy or whatever he is at halftime. I call it the woke bowl, and that's what it's turning into be. It's not. It's all about money and getting out there and not representing our country. It's representing themselves and showing how great they are. You know, it's sad how we've let team sports get to this part.
Coach Tuberville, what do you make of college football and college athletics today with the advent of paying the players, with gambling now? We had a big round of indictments on college betting the other day. What's your overall view of how college athletics is working in this country, and does Congress need to step in on any of these issues?
Oh, big time. It's a disaster. I've had a bill that Joe Manchin and I came up with a few years ago, and Chuck Schumer wanted to put unionization in it and wouldn't put it on the floor. But it's a disaster. There's no leadership. The NCAA, they decided after their 500th lawsuit, they said, we're out of this mess. There's no way we can regulate this. And then really they were probably right. But what we've done is we've almost destroyed women's sports, Olympic sports, and the sports that people really love, college basketball, men and women, and football, college football. It's a disaster, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. I don't know the answer to it. I cannot stand the attitude of there's no education to it anymore. You have kids that are transferring every year. And if you transfer one time, you're very lucky to be able to get a degree. But it's just, Scott, it's just off the deep end. It's kind of like the rest of our country. We've lost our mind. There's no basics anymore. And again, we've got to stand up to the people that say, hey, we want all this money. Say, listen, this is not about money. This is about education. I don't mind them making money, but don't destroy education from thousands and thousands of other people.
Yeah, I was watching a press conference. I forget the kid's name, but, you know, they asked him about, it was after one of the games, that asked him about how things were going at school with all the football preparation. He said, I graduated 2 years ago. I mean, honestly, this is like college athletics, and we've got somebody that hasn't been in class in 2 years. It's a little strange.
Yeah, no education to it, Scott. And I've talked to the president about it. I hope we can get him to do something in terms of an executive order. Yeah, that's the only way we can get anything done around here, because Republicans, we have the House, the Senate, and the White House, but we can't pass a bill because we have rhinos on the Republican side. We have people that don't want to stand up to the Democrats. It's just, I mean, it's one thing after another. When we've got all the power and we can't get a damn thing done up here because nobody wants to stand up for what's right, it just makes me sick at my stomach.
Senator, is that why you're leaving Washington and running for governor? Are you sort of just tired of banging your head against the wall in Washington? You think you can get more done in Alabama? Yeah,
you know, I looked at it, Scott, for a year. About this time last year, I decided I was it's time to go back to Alabama. I looked at because I'd only do it for 6 more years up here. What can I get done? You've got to be way up the totem pole on seniority here. It's not about merit. It's about seniority, and that's one thing that I dislike about the Senate. I don't know why we don't do things on merit. We should do that all over the country. But I looked at the governor's race, and I talked to the president about it. He's sending more power and the money back to the states and giving the states more leeway of how you want to run your own state. And I told the president that, and he agreed with me that it's if you want to do that, you'll do good at it because you've put things together, you've made tough decisions. It's like you running a big business, being in college football. And so, yeah, I can get more done back in the state of Alabama as governor. And again, it's just unfortunate up here. When you're low on the poll like I am and a lot of other people, you have no say.
One of the bills that a lot of conservatives right now are really hoping gets some momentum is the SAVE Act. You've been a longtime supporter of the SAVE Act. Tell us about the SAVE Act and what that would do for American election security.
If we don't make our elections to where people trust them, this country's over. And I think that had a lot to do with why the president went into Venezuela, a lot of other things. But one was that's where all the Dominion voting machines and all the tech groups were running those machines out of Venezuela, and he's trying to get to the bottom of that. We need one-day voting. We need paper ballots, and we need voter ID. And if we don't get that before next November, we'll probably lose House, maybe even the Senate. And then, heaven forbid what will happen in 2 years after that for the presidential race. But we as Republicans, Scott, could stand up today and put it on the floor. And if they voted it down, we say, okay, enough's enough. We're busting the filibuster, and we're going to vote this in. Because if we don't have rules and regulations going into this election cycle coming up, they're going to cheat us. They're going to let illegals vote. They're going to miscount the ballots. They're going to have voting machines that are off the charts in terms of giving votes, just like they did in 2020. That was an embarrassment to people in this country that want fair elections. When Joe Biden, they said he got 80 million votes. Are you kidding me? That guy couldn't get 40 million votes. And it's just we're to the point now where it's either do something about it, or shut the heck up, and just let the Democrats run this country into the ground and give communism to the American people, because that's what's going to happen.
What's your radar tell you about the future of the SAVE Act? Do you think it will come to the floor? I know there's a few Republicans that have said they've had some issues with it. I mean, do you think you'll get to a place where the entire conference at least could support the SAVE Act?
I would hope, but that would only be 53 votes. We'd probably lose 1 or 2. We always do, because they don't trust President Trump. Anything that makes sense up here, we have people vote with the Democrats and they go the other way. But it's that's just the way it is. And heaven forbid, like I said, we've got 7-8 months to get this done. And they're getting ready to shut the government down. And we don't have enough nerve to say, listen, you want to shut it down. But we're going to vote our 53 votes. We need 7 of y'all to vote with us to pass these bills to not shut the government down. Well, we're scared to death of them. We have got to stand up to these people that want to change our country into something that it's not, which is communism.
Well, they want to shut the government down, it sounds like, over illegal immigration. And it's crazy to me how the Democratic Party has made illegal immigrant populations all over this country their number one constituency. Is it your prediction that we are going to see a shutdown? What do you think is going to happen here?
Unless we take the Homeland Security out of this bill, which it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any sense. This is how stupid the Democrats are. There is funding for DHS in this bill, but DHS is already funded for 4 years because we did that in the big, beautiful bill, almost $90 billion. So that's really off the table. What they would, if they shut it down, they would shut down the TSA, they would shut down the Coast Guard, and they would shut down paying the military. And so it makes no sense that they would be defunding the people that we absolutely need to defend this country. But they're so stupid that they think that we're not going to shut it down, but they might not be stupid. We might let them do it and shut it down and or vote along with them and give them what they want. But I wouldn't give them a damn inch, because I'll tell you what, they don't give us one thing, or didn't in 4 years that they were in charge while I was here under Joe Biden. They looked at us and laughed at us, and we had Republicans voting with them. It just makes no sense. We have got to stand up now, or this country is going to be gone.
Senator Tuberville, one last question for you. I'm sure you're watching all of this unfolding nonsense in Minneapolis. What do you make of these Democrats up there who simply have decided they want to nullify federal immigration laws in their jurisdiction?
When they're stealing our taxpayers blind, they are defrauding the taxpayers in this country, stealing right and left. That's what this is all about, is a cover-up from the state government to the city government to the county government. They're all in on it. And they've got this lady, Ilhan Omar, congressman up there from a third world country, who probably should be in jail because she falsified whatever to become a citizen. And then how about that this morning, where it looks like that World War II wrestling? You know, this guy's sitting on the front row and he runs to the side like he's going to, but he doesn't go at her. He runs to the side and sprays apple cider vinegar or something like that. It looked like World War wrestling. So, Scott, I tell you what, it's just disheartening to see our country go this direction when we need more and more people that will stand up to the communist socialists of this country and say, we're going to close our borders. Thank God President Trump did that. We got to get these people out of here. 98% of the country is going by the rule of law, but except for Minnesota. And what do they have in common? They are stealing the taxpayers blind. Stealing them blind.
That is Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama. More with him on his run for governor when we come back. It's Common Sense for the American people. Stay with us.
Straight talk without the bluster. When you positively need the truth, this is where you come. The Scott Jennings Show.
Home stretch here on Wednesday, January 28th. On the line with us, Coach, Senator, and I think soon-to-be governor of Alabama, Tommy Tuberville, is with us. Coach, thanks for hanging on the line with us here. I want to talk a little bit about your run for governor of Alabama and hear what your platform is. I do want to start with a question about taxes. You know, a lot of red states have dramatically cut state income taxes or even phased them out altogether. Is that something that you are looking at if you become governor of Alabama, major reductions in taxes on your people?
Well, it's a good point, Scott. And what is President Trump's agenda? Number one agenda is to grow this country. And to do that, we have to bring manufacturing back. Now, there's not a day goes by or a week goes by up here in the Senate. I don't have manufacturing companies come to me from either the United States or from overseas saying, Coach, we want to move to Alabama. We know they're going to some of these other senators and doing the same thing in local states, whether it's Florida or Georgia or Mississippi or Tennessee. Yes, we have to be able to compete to do that. When other people, Mississippi just started dropping their state income tax, they don't have state income tax in Florida. So in the future, we've got to look at some possible ways to keep our tax base, but also lower it to where we can encourage these businesses to come in with these high-paying jobs. And so we'll look at all avenues. I'm not big on property tax, to be honest with you. Why? And I've listened to Ron DeSantis about this in Florida. Why do you have somebody buy a home and you never really own it because you got to continue to pay to own it to either the state or the city or the county, and it just makes no sense to me. Now, I can understand people that have 2 or 3 homes that live in other states and maybe you need the tax, but there's a lot of things that you can do to take the burden off the taxpayers. And I'm telling you, though, Scott, I'm hearing from people all over my state. Why should I pay any kind of taxes when there's no oversight and you're allowing people to steal us blind? And I can't blame them.
I know another big issue for you, Coach, is education policy. You strongly believe in parents having a stronger role in education. What are you looking at in terms of changing education policy in Alabama to strengthen parents' involvement?
Yeah, well, you got to give kids back to the parents. A lot of these schools, these tenured schools that are run by unions, you have a lot of these kids coming out of these schools that can't read and write. And if you can't read and write, you can't do math, you can't do science, you can't do history. Now, I've been in almost every state in this country except for Alaska, visiting schools when I was recruiting on the high school level, college level, recruiting kids. Now, I've seen a lot of great schools, public schools, but the problem is our inner city kids are getting cheated because we don't have a lot of those inner city schools that are getting the job done in terms of teaching these kids. They come out and they're illiterate. I mean, they can't read and write, and they can't do anything, but they just pass them on through. So yeah, I'm a true believer of the choose the school that you want to go to. We have that in the state of Alabama, to where you can get a stipend, and if you're not getting the education that you want, or the parents don't think you are, you can go to another school, and the government will give you a check to pay into that school, a private school. So a lot of people said, we need public schools. If you look at what's happened, Scott, we have twice as many administrators now than we had when you and I was in school, and we don't have near as many teachers because they're getting those easier jobs to where you don't have to go in that classroom for 4 or 5 hours a day to teach. They're taking the easy way out. It's time that we cut out administrators, put more teachers in the classroom, and teach these kids to read and write. If we don't, then we're going to continue to drop in this country. We're 27th in the world right now in education. We should be number one, no doubt.
Coach, you were a legendary football coach, and then you got into public service. I sense a little frustration in your voice with what you've learned in politics. Do you think being governor is going to assuage that frustration? It sounds like being senator for you has been a bit of a frustrating experience.
Well, it's a learning process, and there's some good things that happen up here in the federal government. The problem, it is so hard to get anything done. And for 4 years, Scott, I sat back and listened to guys like Secretary Mayorkas of the Homeland Security say, our border's closed, but we're letting 5,000 people a day to come in. We're $38 trillion in debt, and nobody's worried about it up here. Nobody's worried, but we are absolutely spending money that our great-great-great-grandkids are going to have to pay for. And our dollar's getting less valued. Thank God President Trump got in. He closed the border, but we had so many negative things happen in my first 4 years here. I'm looking around going, how are we even still up here? Why are the American people even paying taxes to pay for this nonsense that we're doing here? I mean, we serve no purpose.
That's Coach Tommy Tuberville, Senator, soon-to-be Governor of Alabama, coachforgovernor.com. Thanks for joining us today. See you tomorrow on Scott Jennings Show.